DVC production.
This is a beautiful performance against a very tough guy in Michael Johnson. How do you feel about it?
Fuck that. Conor McGregor.
Boxingvoice.com.
You know me, Larry. From a wicked entrance, from a flip over the rock into a knock out. Now, when the main thing is, I just help the guy. I wish.
Boxingvoice.com.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Mixed Combat Radio. If you're listening, you probably just hopped over from TBV, the Boxing Voice, breaking down all the boxing action this weekend. Now you're coming on to the pseudo-affiliate of the Boxing Voice, Mixed Combat Radio, to break down and discuss all the MMA talk this weekend. But specifically, we're going to break down UFC 210. There's tons of other topics, MMA-related, that we need to get to. I know every listener out there wants me to talk about maybe the free agencies moves with Ryan Bader, Lorenz Larkin, Bellator, pay-per-view, etc. But we're not going to talk about that in this show. Purely a UFC 210 breakdown preview. I'm going to come back tomorrow and do another show just sort of outlining all the news and headlines in the MMA world because I know I've been lacking on that. Just been a little busy with the Boxing Voice, as you know. But I'm joined today, as always, because he's my ride or die brother from LA. Santiago, how you doing, brother?
Doing good. Switching over from TVV to MCR here to basically be the casual observer of mixed martial arts and the UFC.
Yeah, and obviously UFC 210 isn't like the most star-studded card. Top to down, there's definitely fights there that I'm intrigued by, and there's fights in there that I'm not intrigued by, just to be honest. Now, the main event, though, to me is very intriguing and one of the best fights of the year on paper, especially in terms of a rematch. But let's get down to it, the nitty and the gritty details of this card. We're going to start from top to bottom. We might skip some fights. I might probably just make mention of them, give a really brief pick because it's late. It's 8 o'clock here on the West Coast. I want to go to sleep early tonight. It's been a long week for me. But the main event, the light heavyweight championship of the world, Daniel Cormier is fighting in a rematch against Anthony Johnson. They fought once before. Daniel Cormier won by third round, rear naked choke, I believe. I know that's the way he beat him. I don't remember the round specifically, but I believe it was the third round. But now we have the rematch. Anthony Johnson has been on a tear, knocking out people, sending teeth into the stands, just being the destroyer of worlds, that one hitter and quitter that we all sort of knew he was. He just keeps showing that against elite competition like Glover Teixeira. Knocking him out in one round is just insane. So I'm really hyped on this fight. And I tend to also lean towards Anthony Johnson as well. I know that he's a little bit of technically he's the betting favorite this time around. But I think in terms of the MMA public, they think Daniel Cormier is going to win because of the wrestling, because of the cardio, and just the heart and determination factor. Anthony Johnson famously was being screamed at by his coach in the first fight, "Don't quit, don't quit." And I've heard tons of people sort of give their thoughts on that and say that any fighter that has a trainer yelling "Don't quit" has quitting issues. And he is also shown to have quitting issues in the past and just to have overall not mental issues, because that sounds like he's like bipolar or something like that, but just mental lapses in the cage. But I think he's going to win this time. I think Anthony Johnson, he was the guy that we all wanted to face John Jones because of the knockout power, because of the boxing of Anthony Johnson. His uppercuts are just devastating. His overhand rights are stuff that makes me want to just like curl up in bed and cry because it's that powerful and devastating. But I'm going to pick Anthony Johnson by knockout, second round, but it's going to be very close. I could see it going very similar to the first fight as well, where Anthony Johnson knocked down Daniel Cormier in the first round, hurt him real bad, and then Daniel Cormier just uses wrestling, tired Anthony Johnson out, and got the sub. That could very well happen this time. I think it's probably the more likely thing, but I just have this sinking feeling that we're going to get Anthony Johnson with the highlight reel knockout over the much older Daniel Cormier, who's nearing 40 at this point. So a lot of things going into this fight. Santiago, your thoughts on these two guys?
Well, off the bat, we're going to have a dissenting view. I'm going to be leaning with Daniel Cormier on this one, just based on the fact that he did get the win the last time. And when you talk about a fighter that has issues with, continuing to fight through, and you see your own corner basically tell you, don't quit, don't quit. To me, it's just kind of like I can't really stick with a guy like that. Obviously, something in him makes him accept the realization I'm not going to win and I'm not going to bother. So obviously, that's just my casual observation. I have heard of the name Daniel Cormier. I've actually faced off against him in EA Sports UFC 2. And I wouldn't be surprised if the veteran uses his experience to get the win.
Yeah, and like I said, if Daniel Cormier wins, that's the safe bet. Even though the Vegas odds are different, I think we can all agree that the Vegas odds do not accurately reflect what the public thinks most of the time. Not most of the time, but sometimes. And I think this is one of those times where they get it wrong in terms of what the public thinks. But I know that they're looking to try to make money. But I digress. We're going to go to the co-main event. Chris Weidman coming back against the streaking Gegard Mousasi. And Chris Weidman coming off that brutal flying knee knockout loss against Yoel Romero in the first ever UFC card in New York City. This is concerning for me. This shows a further lack of knowledge, willingness, idea. I don't know, like the idea that the UFC never does tune-ups. Like that's always been talked about. And this is just another case of a guy not getting a tune-up, man. Like he should have got a tune-up in his last fight. And he fought Yoel Romero. Undefeated. Should have got a title shot. Oh, wait, he was undefeated. He had that controversial loss to Jacare Souza. But I digress. That was questionable from a matchmaking standpoint. And I thought that Chris Weidman against the Yoel Romero fight, you can make a case that it's okay. That even though he had the devastating loss against Luke Rockhold, had neck surgery, that he could still beat the Yoel Romero. And I had him winning that fight till the knockout loss. But and then you put him back against Gegard Mousasi, who hasn't lost since his fight against Lyoto Machida, I believe. This just makes no sense from a matchmaking and a promoter standpoint. I don't know if it's Chris Weidman wanting these tough fights and no tune-ups. I don't know if it's just the UFC lacking any sort of foresight. But, I mean, Chris Weidman's about to get thrown through the ringer. Luke Rockhold, Yoel Romero, and Gegard Mousasi. That's a murderer's row of people. You don't just fight those three people like it's nothing. If a champion fought those three guys in a row, that's a great championship run. So I'm just very concerned about the matchmaking of this fight and where Chris Weidman's head is at. And I was the guy that was sort of a Chris Weidman fan. I thought he really impressed against Anderson Silva. I thought he really impressed against Lyoto Machida. I thought he really impressed against Vitor Belfort. And then just something happened. Maybe it's injuries. Maybe it's just age. I tend to go towards the injury route because the guy's just been beat up a lot. Just like regular injuries through training, blowing out knees, spinal surgery. Like these are very evasive injuries that he's had. Broken hands, stuff like that. So Chris Weidman's a huge asterisk to me in this fight. And that's why I am leaning Gegard Mousasi by decision. Again, I think Gegard Mousasi is obviously the better striker, and his submission game is very underrated. But Chris Weidman is obviously the better grappler overall. The guy is a phenom in terms of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and obviously an All-American collegiate wrestler. But I think Gegard Mousasi is able to sprawl and brawl, technically, to make it very simplistic. I think he's going to pick him apart on the feet and negate the grappling of Chris Weidman, similar to what Yoel Romero did. Obviously, Yoel Romero is a gold medal winner at the Olympics in freestyle wrestling. So the guy is just insane, and he medaled in every international competition he's ever been in. So Yoel Romero is a wrestling freak. I'll give him that, and maybe that's why Chris Weidman looks so bad in the grappling department against Yoel Romero. But, man, huge asterisk. I'm going to leave it at that. Chris Weidman is a huge asterisk right now. Santiago, thoughts?
Yeah, no, I don't blame you for feeling that way because the way you described it, going back to my knowledge of boxing, it makes me think of what happened to Mike Alvarado. Mike Alvarado never took a single tune-up, and he, went from, you know, the Rios to Provodnikov to Marquez, and like obviously with the kind of caliber of fighters that you're describing that he's going up against without taking even a like stay busy fight. Yeah, it's odd to hear that, this guy's gonna be just going in tough. I mean, he's looking at, if anything, 3 straight losses at this point, so I'm with you on this one in particular, just based on the fact that this guy hasn't been taking it easy at all.
Yeah, and like you said, a 3-fight losing streak. And in the UFC, that used to be the death nail. Like once you had a 3-fight losing streak, your walking papers were around the corner. Things are different. Chris Weidman's still a top 5, top 10 middleweight. So I think that he will be safe from any sort of eviction by the UFC, even though they've been really trigger happy about letting fighters go. I think Chris Weidman's safe in terms of his job, but not safe in terms of this fight. Gegard Mousasi, I'm sorry, he had the loss against Uriah Hall in that Mortal Kombat Tekken sort of finishing move where Uriah Hall did a spinning back kick as Gegard Mousasi was ducking for a takedown, got hit with that kick. Then Uriah Hall flew into a flying knee, hit Gegard Mousasi. Mousasi is still on his feet and then gets hit with a few punches and goes down. Ref calls it. He's beat Thales Leti since then, Thiago Santos, Vitor Belfort, and Uriah Hall in a rematch, and is on a 4-fight winning streak with 3 of those fights due to finish. So I think Gegard Mousasi is just on a run right now. He's looked to have sort of put it all together at this point in his career. So again, Gegard Mousasi is my official pick, and so is Santiago's. We're going to skip this next fight, and I'm sorry to all the women MMA supporters out there. And, I'm a big women sport supporter, I guess. But I don't know these girls at all. So I don't feel safe giving a prediction on it. I haven't seen them fight, to be honest. Cynthia Cavallo versus Pearl Gonzalez in the women's strawweight division. I'll be honest. Cynthia Cavallo is the only one that has a Wikipedia page. Just saying. So I'm going to pick her. Even though I said I wasn't going to pick, I'm going to pick her. Fuck it. I don't know who they are. And we're going to move on because I know you don't know who they are, Santiago. Thiago Alves returning to the welterweight division after a very, very poor decision to try to go down to lightweight is facing Patrick Cote, who's been successful overall since moving down from middleweight to welterweight. Very intriguing fight from a stylistic standpoint. Patrick Cote has always been seen as sort of the boxer in MMA. Great left hand knockout power. Not the greatest kickboxing game in terms of his kicking game, but not the greatest grappler either. And then you have Thiago Alves, who's just a devastating Muay Thai striker. He was the guy that was beating people with leg strikes way before we had Edson Barboza and Jose Aldo as such. And so this fight's very interesting to me. Thiago Alves, another guy who's had so many injuries in his career, plagued with inactivity recently. A lot of asterisks around him. But then you have Patrick Cote, who's, in my opinion, over the hill. In my opinion, has suffered some devastating defeats as of late against like Donald Cerrone. I'm hesitant on both guys, to be honest. Neither guy is going to make a final run at the belt, in my opinion. This is just a good, entertaining scrap, potentially. And I'm picking Thiago Alves. I think he's just the better technical striker. But he's the smaller guy. He's more injury-prone. So if you pick Patrick Cote, Santiago, or anyone else, do not feel like you're the minority. I almost want to say Patrick Cote, but I just have never had really any faith in him at the highest level. At least Thiago Alves put on a fight of the year fight against one of the greatest of all time in Georges St. Pierre when he fought for the title, while Patrick Cote looked like dog shit against Anderson Silva. So I'm picking Thiago Alves by decision, not by knockout. I think both guys are pretty tough and durable. So I'm going to Alves by decision. Going to be a very entertaining scrap, in my opinion. Santiago, your thoughts?
Yeah, no, obviously, I'm actually gonna pick Patrick Cote on this too, and like our co-main event, Chris Weidman, Thiago Alves is also currently on a 2-fight losing streak too, having lost by both knockout and decision. Both men are actually coming off losses though, but it's just the one for Patrick Cote to the two for Thiago Alves. Uh, I understand not like the fact that you don't have any faith in him and the fact that he's probably over the hill, but I got a good feeling about this guy. I actually do, and I wouldn't be surprised if he gets the win.
No, and it's one of those fights where it's really 50-50 in my mind, and it could go either way. And I kind of feel it's going to be one of those split decision fights where it's a 29-28 scorecard either way. But again, it's a good fight, but it's two veterans. It's Mike Alvarado and Brandon Rios fighting. You know what I mean?
Yeah, most definitely, and you can't go wrong when you get that kind of a fight.
Exactly. Like it will still be entertaining, but it just has really almost no meaning in the greater landscape of the sport. But we digress. We're gonna move on because we're gonna try and make it a quick show. It's late. We're trying to get out of here. Will Brooks versus Charles the Bronx Oliveira. I love this fight completely. I love that Charles Oliveira is also moving back up to lightweight. I thought he was just draining himself way too much at featherweight, even though he was having some success. Charles Oliveira, one of the greatest Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioners in the lower weight classes. Just a brutal guy with leg locks, arm locks, chokes. The guy is insanely good, pulling calf splicers and shit like that on people. The guy's a phenom in every sense of the word. But, and there's always a but with people like that, he has some major in-cage IQ lapses. Like he doesn't, similar to an Anthony Johnson, doesn't have the greatest willpower, doesn't have the greatest determination, and also just makes stupid mistakes in the cage that they shouldn't be, making those mistakes against that level of competition, but they do. That's sort of been Charles Oliveira's reputation, that he is a overachiever or an underachiever, depending what you think of him. But it's definitely strong opinions about Charles Oliveira. Now, Will Brooks, former Bellator champion, lightweight champion that came over, had the very, very close loss to Donald Cerrone, I believe. Let me look that up right now. No, sorry. He did not lose. He beat Ross Pearson, and then he lost to Alex Oliveira, the welterweight who moved down to lightweight, missed weight, came in like 10 pounds overweight on the weigh-ins, and knocked him out with a punch. But Will Brooks is still a legit level lightweight. He's still a top 10 level lightweight. I don't know if Charles Oliveira is a top 10 level lightweight anymore in this current lightweight landscape. I feel like Will Brooks is going to stick to the game plan, keep it real simple with fundamentals, work his, in my opinion, superior striking game, and mixing in some grappling to just keep Charles Oliveira on his toes, keep him guessing, and Will Brooks is going to win a close decision victory. And again, as we're going down through this card, Santiago, I'm picking a lot of fights by decision. That's a concern for me from an entertainment standpoint, because if you know this as a boxing fan, if all the fights are going to decision, it especially for like the live crowd, it really doesn't matter how exciting they are sometimes, because we want that finish. Like if we're there live or casuals, like we want that knockout, we want that submission, we want something.
No, of course. And it seems like for Will Brooks, just looking back on his record too, it seems like he can win the decision. And if you're going to pick Charles Oliveira to win, it'll probably be by submission.
Yes.
And he really needs a win too, because like his last 5 fights, he's 2-3, and right now Oliveira lost his 9-fight win streak with his most recent fight. Will Brooks did against Alex Oliveira. So Will Brooks, I would imagine, would be the obvious favorite and choice. But yeah, no, I mean, if all fights go the distance, even if they are entertaining, unless they're like, transcendent, you can really lose your attention really fast. It's not.
Yeah, there's a sense like fans want finality with these fights, like especially if they're close fights. And like Gegard Mousasi, Chris Weidman could be a very close fight. Thiago Alves versus Patrick Cote could be a very, very close fight. Will Brooks versus Charles Oliveira could be a very, very close fight. And they could all be controversial decisions.
Yeah, if you're gonna get a decision, you want there to be a certain level of decisiveness to it too. You don't want it to be left to like, oh, maybe this guy won or that guy won for whatever different reason, or the judges didn't score this, didn't score that. So that's the dangerous nature of it all too when it comes to fights going the distance.
Yes. Now I'm going to quickly run through all of these prelims, and then you're going to give your thoughts on them, Santiago. We're going to try to wrap this up. Miles Jury is finally coming back and having a fight. I'm so happy about that. There was a sort of hiatus thing going on with him. I know he had some injuries to deal with, but it was one of those things where I thought that he was either going to retire or get the walking papers by the UFC. It was very odd. And he's fighting Mike De La Torre, and I'm picking Miles Jury to win. Probably by emphatic fashion, either by knockout submission the first or second round. I think I was really high on Miles Jury from who did he beat that I was really high on? I'm looking him up right now. Hold on. This was years ago. It was the Takanori Gomi fight. That's right. When Miles Jury just picked apart Takanori Gomi and knocked him out, I was really high on him. And then he got just dominated by Donald Cowboy Cerrone. That's acceptable, though. It's Donald Cerrone. And then he had a submission loss to Charles Oliveira in 2015. So it's been some time for him. But I'm picking him to win. I think it's a better grappling, better wrestling, better striking. He's better in every single aspect. The longer guy, more powerful guy. So I'm picking Miles Jury to win. We have Kamaru Usman, who was on the tough season that had America Top Team versus the Black Zillion team. And he's fighting Sean Strickland. Very intriguing fight. Sean Strickland, sort of like a poor man's Diaz brother in a way, or like a Jorge Masvidal. Like one of those guys that's just good at almost everything. Not great at one thing, but he's durable as fuck. He's tough. And he can just scrap in every sense of the word. So that's going to be a very tough fight for Kamaru Usman, whose wrestling is very highly touted. But I'm picking Sean Strickland. Sean Strickland has always shown to me to always just be better than his opposition at this point. And Usman is not a huge step up for him. Strickland's going to lose when he faces a huge step up in competition. Then we have Charles Rosa versus Shane Bourgois. I'm picking Charles Rosa by decision. He has a better grappling in my standpoint. Then we have Patrick Cummins versus Jan Blachowicz. Very intriguing light heavyweight fight. Jan Blachowicz coming off that loss to Alexander Gustafsson. Patrick Cummins coming off, I assume, a loss because he hasn't been doing that well. Yeah, 2 losses against Glover Teixeira and Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira. And, Patrick Cummins famously stepped in on short notice, fought Daniel Cormier, and has just sort of been the guy that was the Starbucks barista. They got the phone call and quit his job right there to come to the UFC on short notice. Really highly touted collegiate wrestler, more highly touted than guys like Daniel Cormier even at some point. So, definitely a guy that's been an underachiever, a guy that has a lot of credentials in terms of martial arts, but has not done anything in terms of mixed martial arts. So he is a guy with an asterisk, in my opinion. There's a lot of guys on this card that have that asterisk, and he is one of them. And Jan Blachowicz, his striking looked phenomenal against Alexander Gustafsson. Alexander Gustafsson only beat him due to Gustafsson's superior grappling and wrestling. Gustafsson famously was the first man to take down John Jones and such. So I think that Jan Blachowicz is going to tool him up on the feet, beat him up, because Patrick Cummins has never been one to take shots well. And I think Patrick Cummins is going to face another knockout loss. And then we have a few fights on the Fight Pass prelims. I'm just going to briefly mention Caitlin Chookagian fighting Irina Adana. Caitlin Chookagian, technically the first ever UFC fight in New York City was Caitlin Shokagan at UFC 205, which was the Conor McGregor Eddie Alvarez fight card. And she's looked really impressive. Her striking's high level for women's MMA at least. And her grappling has definitely come up to where she's a formidable opponent at any level at women's strawweight, in my opinion, at this point. So I think she's going to get the win, either late round stoppage, like late second round, early third round, or decision win. But that's pretty much it. There's a few other fights I'm not going to mention just because I have a lack of knowledge on those fighters. I'm going to be transparent about that. These undercard guys, I really don't know as much anymore. I'm not as hardcore of an MMA fan anymore. Santiago, you know, this boxing has me addicted now. Santiago, any thoughts on these prelims?
I'm actually excited for the return of Miles Jury. I actually thought he was retired. I've seen the little snippets here and there about his return, and I'm looking forward to seeing him because he seems like a good fighter from what I've seen just in the game alone, and I look forward to seeing what the man himself actually looks like in person, even if it is through the television. Obviously, I don't know much about any of these other fighters aside from the ones that I've already given a few takes on, but overall, seems like I guess you could say somewhat decent card, really. The fights to look forward to seem to be Miles Jury and then the main event, Cormier Johnson, too.
Yep, and that seems to be the end of the show here, Santiago. You know, it's just one of those days where it's late. I needed to cover this. We needed to cover UFC 210, Daniel Cormier versus Anthony Johnson, too. It's a big fight in the light heavyweight division. It's the biggest fight with John Jones not around. So, Santiago, final thoughts on the card overall. And if you want to give any sort of quick social media shout outs or, what your social media is, go for it.
You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/SANT731.
And obviously, if you're on the show, you know where we are. Hit that subscribe button so you can get all the notifications for when we go live. You can follow us at Mixed Combat News on YouTube, on Patreon, Facebook, iTunes, and at Mixed Combat. Wait, did I say at Mixed Combat News for Patreon, shit like that? I did, huh? I fucked up. Mixed Combat Radio for Patreon, YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, etc., Facebook, and then Mixed Combat News for Twitter. That's a long night. I'm fucking up. Santiago, we're out of here. Peace.
Peace, everybody.